I'm Amanda Silver.
And I'm Alex Howard.
And this is Dirty Laundry.
Okay.
So,
hi. Welcome back.
Welcome back to Dirty Laundry.
Our favorite chair.
Yes.
Chit-chatting about life. What's happening in yours?
I don't know what's happening.
Well, let me tell you what's happening in mine. I have created an algorithmic monster.
I know exactly what you're talking
whereby my Instagram feed is only Jewish food recipes, Jewish gifts that I should be buying.
What Jewish gifts?
Well, there was like the earrings.
We don't. That was news to me.
It was challah-shaped dangly earrings, and there was a part of me that was like, I kind of want these.
You rock it, girl.
I thought about getting them for Bridget. She eats challah every single day. This is her kind of vibe.
Your algorithm it's hysterical, and you send me these.
Well, I have to.
You send them all to me. I'm like, my algorithm doesn't show that. I'm like, oh, that is a good recipe. It's hysterical. It's constant.
Yeah. So we are going to put together a reel and make one of said recipes because I figure if the algorithm knows me, it knows what I want.
And the funniest thing is it's, Passover coming up. And so all of yours have been matzah themed.
Yes.
Which is a tough ingredient to work with, I must say.
Right?
It's not the tastiest of the ingredients.
So that's going to be really putting my culinary skills to the test.
So you're going to do a matzah recipe.
The matzah sushi roll really made me giggle.
I mean, the matzah burrito does look good. I don't know if you've seen that one. I kind of want to try it.
We're going to try. We're going to do some recipe testing.
Okay, fine.
In advance of, are you hosting?
No, I'm going to one. That's just too much effort for me.
It seems like it.
Host a Seder?
Well, so I was at Costco yesterday with Benny and needed a mental health day. Fine. Like, well, we're running errands, buddy. So off we go. And there was a woman, clearly Jewish, just based on her ensemble. And
what do you mean based on her ensemble?
Well, she had like the long skirt, no skin showing. I know. This is probably needs to be cut. Sorry. I swear I love all people.
She was an observant Jewish woman.
An observant Jewish woman. Yeah. Based on my observations. and Benny was like, Mom, do you think she's a caterer? And I'm like, I don't know, bud. Why are you asking? Because she had like 6,000 kosher chicken breasts in her cart.
She's stocking up for Passover.
And I said, she's probably hosting.
Yeah.
Because it's a real big to-do.
I mean, my mom is already starting her cooking. And we are, I don't even know, a week, 2 weeks out, something like that. Yeah. It's a big deal.
What a fun celebration. I'm
excited. It is fun.
For
My
you.
kids love it.
Take pictures, report back.
I will.
Send me all the matzo ball dish recipes that you decide. Should I be sending these recipes directly to your mom instead of to you?
I think you should. I'm going
to have to add her as a friend on Instagram.
You should. The thing is about Passover, it's like you're so excited about like the Passover food for the first like day. And then it's like, oh no, not this again. Then it's like, it's like, it gets heavy.
Yeah. It's because there's no levity.
It's very heavy.
Well, and on that perfect segue, we've got a bit of a heavy episode today.
We do have a bit of a heavy
So we're going to put
our
jokes on hold and we're going to dive right in because it's actually an incredibly informative one. And our listeners have been asking for it.
They've been asking for this episode.
And we're so happy to finally deliver.
Today we have on Kerry McAvoy, who is a fellow podcaster, an author, a PhD in clinical psychologist, with over 20 years of counseling experience, as well as a narcissistic abuse survivor. She now helps men and women who have left an abusive relationship get on the road to healing and recovery. So welcome, Kerry. Welcome, Kerry McAvoy, to the DL. We're so happy to have you here. So thank you for giving us your time.
Yeah, we're really excited for this conversation. We have had a lot of listeners write in asking us to please do an episode about narcissism.
Yes.
And you're the expert, so we are going to ask you all the hard-hitting questions. But first, how did you get to be the expert? What road led you to end up where you are today?
Yeah, well, I'm a retired psychologist, so I have a PhD in clinical psychology, and I went through a unique graduate program because a lot of graduate programs at the time that I was being educated didn't talk much about personality disorders, but mine was unique in the fact that it did, and I actually took a lot of classes in it because I found it fascinating. So I was aware of narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder. And interestingly enough, I also, as a clinician, saw quite a few narcissists in my practice. Not a lot because they don't seek treatment, but I had a few clients that were on the spectrum, towards probably the mild to moderate level of having a narcissistic traits to personality style. But it really didn't become something I was extremely aware of or thought about in terms of my life until after I was widowed. I was widowed in 2015, quite abruptly due to my late husband having cancer, and I found myself just in a massive transition. And here I am. I needed to close my practice to take care of him. My last child was leaving home for college, and I started dating pretty fast and made it like a second job, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I met my soon-to-be second husband a year later, and we married a year after that. And I recognized he had a lot of narcissistic traits. You know, he thought really highly of himself, and he's extremely charming. Was very charismatic. He was a little grandiose in his plans. I recognized all of that. But what's kind of a new in the field out there is that we're realizing that narcissism isn't something that somebody just suffers with. In fact, actually, people who have these traits don't tend to see themselves as the problem, but they make those around them, excuse me, they make those around them suffer. So the people who end up being in trouble are those who are in a relationship with anyone who has a lot of these traits. And so, but I didn't realize that because we didn't talk about that in psychology. So I married him, and next thing I know, I just discovered that. In fact, within 2 months after the marriage, I discovered that I had met somebody who actually was living a double life. Wow. And that really about everything that I knew about him, probably a lot of it wasn't true. And that I actually had married a stranger. And in addition to that, there was lots of problems. I wrote about it. I know you guys know of my book, Love You More, but I wrote about what actually happened. I gave you an inside view of what it's like. It's written like a novel, like a true crime novel, because I don't make this discovery until while I'm writing the book. I'm nearly ending writing the book, which is a tell-all. And at the end, I realized that the entire relationship was a setup, that I had been conned. This person went into the relationship looking for somebody who had been widowed, who had come into a life insurance, and that was what he was after.
Oh,
so
Kerry.
That's how I discovered it. But I didn't even when I'm finishing Love You More, I still didn't know the term narcissistic abuse.
Right.
I'm just getting on social media like everybody else is and starts hearing about it and thinking, oh my goodness, this describes exactly what I just went through. This same tactics, uses the phone the same way, says the same things. It was mind blowing for me.
It's
mind blowing.
It's so interesting how they follow this like playbook that you can see play out. Maybe in hindsight, you see it like, oh my gosh, why didn't I notice that was happening to me while I was in it? Right.
And if I may, I just want to pause here because I think with anything like this, there is a lot of shame involved for the person who has been abused. How did I not see the red flags? How did I let myself get, swept up in all of this?
And give over all of my control.
Yes. And
to
here
someone.
you are, somebody who has a PhD and you study this, and even you were able to get swept up in it. And I don't want to use you, and I hope you're not taking this the wrong way, but to say it can happen to anyone. It doesn't matter if you are intelligent, educated, high up in some company, making billions of dollars. You can still get quote unquote conned. And I'm hoping
scary because it is so common.
It is. And I'm hoping that some of our listeners can find a bit of solace in that if they are going through something similar, to know that they're A, not alone, and B, even somebody with a PhD can get taken. And I mean, I'm so sorry. That sounds absolutely horrific.
Yeah. In fact, people who are narcissistic look for somebody who looks good with them. Yeah. They want somebody who's going to augment their life, look good on their arm. And mine was very proud of the fact that I was a writer at the time. He was very proud that I was a psychologist. He was looking for someone that's going to make him look better. Now, unfortunately, once you're in a relationship with him, they no longer want that. They view that as competition. So they begin to erode you and tear you down. But in the beginning, they're looking for someone that has these incredible attributes because they want that to reflect on them. Look at who I'm with. Look who I can attract. So they do really go for high functioning people. Unfortunately, the abuse results in a deterioration of your functioning. So you're the shell of the person you were when you met them. Right. But in the beginning, they go after you. And I did feel a lot of shame even that's one of the criticisms of Love You More. It's like, oh, you'd think as a psychologist, you would have recognized this. Well, and then I describe how hard it was for me to leave. So I come off quite pathetic in the story. But if you don't understand what's happening with the trauma bond, the fact that I have been, made to be dependent, made to submit, made to be compliant. My ex was highly sophisticated in coercive control, very subtle stuff. I had no idea that I was being controlled. I mean, I was realizing I was exhausted and being left without food for a lot of the day. And I mean, I was really being run ragged, but I would have never said, oh yeah, I'm being coerced. I didn't even know what coercive control meant or ambient abuse. I had never heard of that term before. But but he took me for a lot of money, and that was very embarrassing. And I remember at the end that I actually had a conversation with my sons. I looked at them and I said, "You must be so ashamed of me." That's literally my head fell in my lap. I was so embarrassed. I was like, I couldn't even keep my head up. You must be so ashamed of me. And they're adults, and they looked at me, and my oldest popped in, and he said, "No, Mom, no. He used the best parts of you against you."
Oh.
Which was like, that to me felt like I felt set free. I just felt totally set free.
Yeah. And you talked about the trauma bond and the sophistication that they bring to their game almost, to their agenda. Do you mind just explaining sort of for our listeners what exactly that looks like? How does this, present?
Yeah. There's two pieces that are incredibly important to understand, which is why people have a hard time leaving and why you don't see it happening when it's happening. It's a trauma bond, and the second is persistent and chronic cognitive dissonance. So I really want to talk about both of those, because I think that if you understand both of these concepts, then you'll understand exactly what's happening to you. So a trauma bond is an intense relationship where you're essentially being brainwashed, and it's happening slowly. They use the same it's a cult of two. It's the same tactics cult leaders use, only it's not a group. It's only between two people. So they initially use a lot of intense things to create trust and connection. And interestingly, psychologists are trained to do this too, because we want to develop a fast rapport to get you to talk about very deep things rapidly. Think about it. You walk into a counselor's office, you don't know them, and you're going to suddenly get psychologically naked with them.
Yeah.
Well, how do you get to that place? Well, clinicians are trained to use the same techniques. So are other people. Salesmen do this, but they make intense eye contact, like eye gazing. They often will touch you in the beginning. So if you ever notice you're walking in, your therapist might put their hand on your arm just briefly, just for a second. They're attentive. They'll actually mirror your body language. Like right now, you both have your legs crossed and facing the same direction. They would actually mirror image you. And so they would sit across from you and then have that same posture as you. And then they begin to make connections with you around your life. And they'll sometimes exaggerate history details as if they had the same history as you, or they'll lie about that, but you'll end up you feel like you've met somebody who's had the same kind of past you had, or went to the same school as you had. And then they'll do another thing in this is how the love bombing works. They'll do another thing in that first appointment, that first date with you, is they'll say, wow, I've never met anyone who gets me the way that you do. I've never met anyone like you. So they create this connection that you guys are in this bubble together that's unique and special, and that you're a special person that has this connection they've never experienced before. And then they'll start to create the future with you. So they'll say things like, I can't wait to do this with you, or show you this, or take you to my favorite place. And what they're now doing, they connected with your past, they created a special moment in your present, and they create a future, and you feel like you've known this person for forever, and you have this incredible connection. So this causes an intense dependency and an intense connection that you like, wow, I've never felt this way. I've never been understood like this before. I've never had anyone see me like this before, which creates a hunger. You really want that, because all of us actually have a wish that we could find our twin.
Yeah.
And when we marry someone, we often are looking for that person and that partner and somebody like that. But then they do this other really nasty tactic to cement the bond, is they will begin to, in some way, threaten it. Like they'll do some kind of possible withdrawal, or they'll maybe make some kind of condition, like a conditional statement. And so you feel like you found this soulmate, this incredible connection, and then you might lose it. And that creates fear and panic, which then causes you to betray yourself and to give in to whatever it is to this person. Here's what mine did to do that with me. I after my third child, had a massive hair loss. So I am I'm nearly bald, and I wear wigs. So you're seeing a wig on me, and that's why you see constantly different colors on me, because I'm wearing all sorts of different color wigs. And at the time, I had not really come out to the public about it. I felt deep shame. It was a very traumatic experience for me. But I would tell, if I had anybody that I dated at any length of time, I needed to let them know, because they might bump it or pull it off, or maybe grab my hair too hard or something when they're kissing me. And it could create this really awkward moment. So I shared with him that I had this, and that I would, if I did a stay over, I was going to need to wear a cap. And he said, if you can't be naked with me by showing what you really look like, I'm too tired to have a relationship. I've done this too much, and I want a real relationship.
Wow.
And there was the test. And so here I thought I had met this perfect person after dating, meeting all these men that were no's, and I'm going to lose this over my fear to reveal a part of myself that ideally in a trusting relationship you would. Yeah. So I thought it wasn't like an unreasonable request. And so I did. And then he knew he'd gotten me. I'd sacrificed myself, and I'd given him. But that was a real dramatic experience, but it could be simply like they text you and then disappear. Right. Or you text them and you can't get a hold of them. Or you have this really great experience and they don't hear from them for several days to a week. Or they do the smooth operator thing of a hot and cold, which is intermittent reinforcement. But that's the start. The trauma bond, that's the first stage, and there's actually 7 stages of it. So by the end, you've now, in the beginning, you've been high on that pedestal, and then slowly they begin to introduce criticism, and they introduce gaslighting, and they start to be deceptive, and all this process happens, and you feel like you're desperate to keep this relationship, and yet on the other hand, it's always being threatened, so they create this bond of fear, not a bond of safety and love. Now, here's the other piece, though, that really makes it permanently makes it so toxic and so hard. You think you met a real person. Now, if you go back to dating, we all do a bit of a sale. We put our best foot forward. You don't actually meet who you're going to be living with. You meet who they kind of know you want to meet, but also, your best side. Totally. But what you don't know when you meet somebody who's really toxic is you've not met the best side of them. They've created who you want to meet. It's
They're like
the
chameleons.
best side of what you want, not the best side of them. So it's a false person. It's actually, you've met Dr. Jekyll. You met this incredible guy or incredible woman. And you don't realize that who they really are is Mr. Hyde or Ms. Hyde, but you haven't seen that person. You've never met them. And so they hide that until there's a cementing event, like you move across country for them, or you take a new job to be close to them, or you move in with them, or you get married or get pregnant or whatever like that. And then when that moment happens, they know they've got you. Then they start to reveal their other side, the real person, the person you've never seen before. And it really is a person you've never seen before. And so then, but you don't know that. You think that other person is the actual person. Right. It's just they had a bad moment, or maybe they're hungry, or maybe you had a fight, so you come up with an explanation. So you work super, super hard to get that original person back. And you end up feeling like you don't know what's true. And it creates this mental gridlock that's called cognitive dissonance, where you can't tell what's real, so you can't make a decision. It creates literally a mental, analytical, complex problem that's not solvable, but you keep trying to solve it. And I'll tell you, it is the most agonizing emotional space or psychological space I have ever been in. I would think, is he working or is he not working? Does he love me or not love me? Who is he really? What's really actually happening here? I don't know. And because you can't determine it, you can't make any decisions because you don't have the facts. And so you take that fear of losing them along with not knowing what's real, and it's incredible. It's horrible. And it keeps you stuck. That's why you can't leave, is because you're afraid of making a wrong. What if that is really the good person and you just have been having a bad relationship or things are been going poorly? What if you make it? You you made a decision to get into a relationship, you're afraid now of making another bad decision. So you make no decision at all. So you just stay. You keep thinking, well, the unknown's worse. At least I know what I've got.
Yeah. Yeah, they've undermined your confidence and your ability, your independence even.
And to trust your own instinct. And I wonder at what point then, and then maybe that's why a lot of people have a difficult time leaving these relationships. What point do they finally leave? Like, is it usually an inciting incident or maybe an affair or a drug issue? Or like, what is it that makes them actually leave?
It's usually not that. It's usually not those big moments because usually they're very good at saying all the right things. I mean, for me, it was, and I kept finding that my mind was cheating, kept finding more and more evidence. And then I started stalking and snooping and doing all this crazy stuff, trying to determine what's real. And every time I'd find something, it wouldn't be the thing that would cause me to leave. So what usually it takes, and it's kind of a bizarre thing, and it feels like someone flipped the switch, is what it feels like. There's a moment that it just is, you've had it. It's enough. I heard recently Dr. Ramani calls it the breaking the shelf moment. You have a break a shelf moment where suddenly you're just like, you know what, I can't take it. And it could be something super small. Mine was, we went on a vacation and he went off on me and just lit into me about how stupid I was for picking the location that I did. He goes, that's what's wrong with you. You don't think. And he went into this big tirade. And I looked at him and I just thought, this would never be okay for someone to do one of my adult sons. Why is it then okay that he does this to me? And that was my moment. I like, wow. And then I remember looking at him a few hours later thinking, this is not what love looks like. Did he ever love me? I don't think he ever loved me. How could I not have seen this before? And then I knew I was ready. So usually it takes this kind of this aha, this clarity that comes, but it's hard to get there. It's really hard. And it usually is not, it's not a big thing. It's not one of those like, you'd think like when I found out that he'd been cheating that I would have left. Or how about when I found out that he had a long-term girlfriend he kept flying in to see that I would have left, No, it's usually, it's something that's much more subtle. It's you get to this breaking the shelf moment.
And is it, would you say, a spectrum? Like, could someone have narcissistic tendencies, but not necessarily be a full-blown, diagnosed personality disorder? Are we seeing traits in regular humans?
And how do you decide where they are on the spectrum?
And how do you know?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I would say not everybody has some narcissistic traits. You're not going to get away from that. But does that make you have narcissistic toxic traits? I would say is the big things you want to watch out for is, does this person have the ability to be empathic towards other people and really care about what's happening in the other person's? Can they make space and show up? Are they able to be self-reflective? Can they stop and pause and take a step back and take ownership over their part and say, yeah, I really lost it there. That was I really got angry. I shouldn't have done that. Can they do that? So those are the things you want to look for, because those are the things that are going to cause you massive problems if they don't have it. So yeah, maybe you do think a little more highly of yourself than you should. And maybe at times you can be a little, you want to get your way, and that's a little manipulative and those types of things. And maybe you're not always the greatest communicator and can be a little passive aggressive instead of dealing with things with head on. But the things you want to watch for, the narcissistic traits that are really toxic is this a person practicing deception? Is this a person who doesn't see you really as you, as a person worthy of love and attention and care and respect? Do they respect you? This is what we miss in a lot of these relationships. This is what I miss, because, and I'll tell you, and it's hard to see in the beginning when the love bombing, they make you feel like they do see you. Like mine would say, hey, it's I should help you. You deserve the help. You've been raising kids your whole life and doing so much for other people. It's your turn to have somebody help you. How can that now feel respected? That makes me feel very respected. But what I didn't notice was, though, that when it came to me texting and saying, hey, it's been a hard day, I didn't get a text back. It's a subtle disrespect that I got. He did it in grand gestures, but he wasn't doing it in the day-to-day life and the moments that inconvenienced him. He didn't allow himself to be. So there's what I didn't see. So pay attention to that, because what happens in a more toxic person doesn't see you as human. You're an object. They don't have an I-you relationship. They have an I-it relationship. I and you're the it, instead of I and you're the you. So if you feel like a person can't make you feel safe and really let you show up and have a bad day and not be perfect, if they're like kind of putting you down or minimizing it or blowing it off, or if you feel like when they're sick and you're sick, it's a competition, you don't have a person who can respect you. Those are warning signs.
Yeah, you're just an object to make them look better. Or, so they're not seeing you for you. It's just, how do you benefit them ultimately?
Yes.
And there's also,
and that's a great question, by the way. Ask them, why do you like me? Or why do you love me?
Yeah.
They'll give you a really bad answer. They'll give you an answer what you do for them. They don't
not
say,
who you are
I
at the
love
core.
your quirky sense of... Yeah, they don't say, I love your quirky sense of humor. Or, the way you make everybody around you feel seen and loved is really amazing. They'll say, I like the way, how you keep the house clean for me. Or I like the way you make me feel. Or I like how you love me. They'll say something like that.
Still all about them. Okay, that's a good test. That's for our listeners. If you have concerns, ask your partner that. That's really interesting. Yeah. You mentioned two branches of narcissism.
The narcissism traits and then the toxic narcissist?
No, there was something else.
Yeah, so I said that everybody's a little narcissistic. Like I said, we all at times want us to come first.
Yeah,
or
sure.
we all once in a while, you know what I'm saying? We don't quite show up the way we should for other people. I mean, that's normal. Is that narcissistic? Yeah, just a titch, probably not really great. But it's when you exceed where you start to disrespect and you don't let people be people. And you only are the person present. You're the only person in your own mind, and you're always taking care of you. But that's hard to see when the love bombing stage. You can see it. Here's another great way to see it. Watch how they treat people who have less power than them. What do they do with the cashier who gets the change wrong? Right. Or maybe this is where mine really blew it. He was at the airport and she didn't quite give him the answer he wanted, so he was losing it on her. Right. I had a date do this. This is one of my dates did. Of course, and I'm not saying this guy, but he saw a woman at the restaurant who happened to have a lot of dental work where she had all her teeth were gold in the front. Now, by the way, let's think about why someone would have to have veneers on the front of their teeth. Yeah. A woman. That meant somebody's punched her and knocked her teeth out or damaged them, right? So she's so she's having veneers. And he said to me, he made her turn around and asked me to tell her what I thought of it.
What? Wow.
On a date.
Oh.
And completely humiliating her in front of me. Terrible. So watch what they do what do they do with pets that they don't like? What do they do? Pay attention to how they treat their employees or coworkers who are not in the same position as them, or how do they talk about their exes? There's where you're going to hear, if you're hearing them run them down, they're all crazy. That's a warning. This person doesn't, first of all, see that they have a side, they have a responsibility in what might have went wrong, but they also, the way that they see others is dismissive.
Yeah. And that leads me to my question about how do they parent?
Yes.
Right? Because they're not, unless their children are, let's say, high performers. And again, it's this reflection of them and their success based on their children's success. What happens when that kid is maybe not so successful, not bringing home straight A's? How are we seeing narcissism present in a parenting role?
Yeah, well, they'll probably have done is they've really urged their children not to show up and not to have a lot of needs because they don't have the capacity to deal with somebody else's emotional needs any more than, a partner who's narcissistic has the capacity to show up when you're sick. They don't have the capacity to show up when their kids are, tired or hungry or scared or whatever the issue is or having a bad day. So you're going to see kids who are probably overly parentified, who are very often, they tend to be one of two extremes. You have kids who are really well-mannered and look super good, and because they're reflecting the goodness for the family, that we keep it together and we keep things private in the house. Or you're going to see kids who are really acting up. You might see kids who are having a rough time and having a rough go and just can't seem to get it together because they're so anxious. And they're scattered and they haven't had anybody offer that sort of support and help them internally get organized and stay together. So you're going to see either a very messy picture, chaos, or you're going to see too neat and too put together. The other problem is you're going to see a lot of familial roles. They don't see their children as people, they see them as roles. So you'll have one is, there's the good kid. There's this one's the funny one. Oh, this one's the smart one. Oh, or this is the one, or this one just never gives us any problems. That's the lost child. So you'll see these like scripts that's really like the way, that's how the child's learned to show up in order to sort of fit into this family. And you're going to see kids who probably are very vigilant, watchful and careful, and maybe like a little jumpy and struggling to focus. You might even I'm not saying ADHD is because of abuse or trauma, but you may have somebody who's sort of acting a little ADHD, a little scattered because they're so nervous and feel like they can't relax and can't focus on just being a kid. So that's how it kind of shows up in families.
Yeah, kids are also extremely narcissistic, if I may, right? That's survival. They have to be incredibly egocentric. The world revolves around children. And so when you're in competition with your parent,
right,
that sort of codependent almost relationship, something's got to give. And so typically it's the child then, sort of, I guess, not regressing, what's the word I'm looking for? Allowing them to show up in
or they're compromising themselves, just like someone else in a trauma bond situation. They're compromising themselves and their needs, but they can't do it in the same way that maybe an adult can with the same composure.
Yeah.
And,
you may even see them kind of excessively worry about one of the parents, you know, be anxious and because that's the trauma bond. They're like, can't be away from that parent. I'm not saying kids who can't leave the house are excessively fearful, have a trauma bond. I'm not saying that, but I do think sometimes that it could be another explanation for things. Sometimes kids are just anxious and have separation anxiety, but separation anxiety also is a presentation you're going to see with kids who have a trauma bond too. So I know people really wish there was a simple answer that you could just see a few things and oh, this is what's going on. No, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. It's really complex and hard to understand, but these are things to me that are kind of like warning lights and may mean you need to slow down and kind of take a deeper look.
So let's say you've already, missed all the red flags. You've gone through it. You've been married to one, you've divorced one, you've had kids with one, and now you have to co-parent with one. What does that look like?
And how does one explain to their children that you can leave this relationship with this toxic person, but they still have to go and spend time with them?
Yeah, that's really tough and here's one of the unfortunate, sad, almost nasty rules about children. And I, by the way, was trained to be a child psychologist first, but just decided that it was too messy to work with all the different organizations that were involved with kids' lives. So I thought, I like adults better. It's cleaner. But one of the things that I saw, and I really hate that this is true, is that kids will defend the more fragile parent. So that means the healthier parent's going to get the crap and they're going to get the pushback and they're going to have the difficult child because the child feels safer. They know that parent's not leaving and going anywhere and they can show up more authentically than the parent that they feel is the connection with that parent is super fragile. And kids always want a relationship with both parents. They don't care that parent's the worst parent in the world. That's their only parent. And they have a deep need and love and wish for this person to be in their lives. And so I think understanding that drive, that desire to have that is really helpful. If you're the parent who's the healthier parent, what I would really urge you is to not weigh in about the other parent, but really listen to how that child's feeling. Like, for example, when the parent makes promises to show up for the weekend and they don't, and you see them one more time, your kid gets disappointed and have to suffer with loss. For you to say something instead of like, yep, that's what he did to me, that they're never consistent, or that you never could count on her. She always puts herself first. Instead of saying something like that, it's way more helpful for you to say, wow, how are you doing? When people don't show up for me, it really hurts. It makes me even wonder if maybe they like me or if it's my fault. So what are you feeling? Or what are you thinking about right now? How's that affecting you? See, I'm talking about that child's experience. I'm not weighing in on the other person at all. Because if you do, well, unfortunately, what's going to happen, because highly conflictual people are competitive. So they're already making the kids compete with you for their attention. And if you then jump in, their kids are going to feel like this is a tug of war. I'm caught between two people who are trying to tell me who do I like better. So by you not commenting on the other parent, you stay out of that dynamic and really keep the relationship clean of that.
It's hard, but I actually
yeah.
really think that's great practical advice, because we need to know how can we support our children when they are still stuck in this dynamic. And
Yeah.
it's about loving them and supporting them and validating their experience, as opposed to just shitting on your ex and
Exactly.
trying to come out as the victor or the better parent. Like, that doesn't help anybody. It really is just love your kid. Love your kid more than you hate your ex. This is always our motto.
Right.
But that's great practical advice. I love that.
It is so hard because here's the hardest thing you're going to have to do as a parent. You're going to have to create space for their pain. You know that other parent's going to hurt them and hurt them badly. You know that because they hurt you and you see them hurting this child. We can't save them from the pain, but what we can do is we can help them process it by creating space for it. So you're being asked to sort of tolerate watching your own child hurt, which is the hardest thing. No parent wants that. But if you can do that, you've really given your kids the best gift possible.
Carrie, is it helpful to give them language, or let's say some like almost definitions or like a greater understanding about the other parent, about their narcissism, generally speaking? Like, maybe not getting into the nitty gritty. Yeah. Because again, you don't want to label or pigeonhole or make it too adult that these kids can't really comprehend, but just by means of a bit of an explanation. So without poo-pooing on their other parent, just say, I don't know what even, but
what
giving
giving
them some language around that so that they can start to understand and comprehend in their own sweet little brains.
I think that's probably will backfire, honestly, because that would make the child feel defensive. Like, no, he didn't mean to not show up for me. He didn't mean to be, he doesn't know, I mean, he's just had a bad day, or you know how his life gets, mom, or how her life gets, dad, so I think chances are if you do that, the child will become defensive for the parent and protect them again, because we're back to my first rule. The crappiest, most fragile parent gets the greatest connection, to get the biggest breaks, because the child really needs to preserve that relationship and preserve the connection with that person. So if they think that person might not actually be showing up because they can't, and maybe because they're not that important to them, which is the unfortunate truth, then that's too painful. Then they can't quite adopt that. I had a child that I treated in the hospital. He was 6 years old. His situation was so bad with his mother that he wanted to die. So he ran in front of a lawnmower, and it caused this massive gash. And he ended up in the hospital because of the risk of harm to himself. But you know what? Every visit that he thought she would show up, you would think it was Christmas. He so desperately wanted that relationship with her, regardless of her inability to be there like that for him. So when we start to put labels, unfortunately, they feel like we're tearing that person down and saying we shouldn't want that relationship. Well, we do want that relationship. So I think what may be a more helpful way to say, I'm so sorry this happened. How are you feeling? Yeah. You look sad. Now, here's the difference. Be careful. Don't say you're sad. And you don't, well, maybe they're not sad. That can almost be gaslighting. You don't know that. You can say, you look sad. You've been crying, or you've been stomping around here. Are you feeling angry? Right. So identify the behavior and say, when I see that, that's what I think. But is that how you're feeling?
Right. Yeah. Because you don't want to project your own emotions or your own feelings towards this person onto them. Yeah. Right. Good point.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So the great way is to talk about what you witness, say how you interpret it, and then ask if that's what they're feeling. I think the other thing is we often get uncomfortable when our kids get angry and start to get real hostile. We can say, it's okay to be upset. I would be upset at that, but we use our words. We don't do things. We use our words.
Yeah. Giving them permission to feel their feelings without any judgment or shame. Gosh, it's so tricky.
And I wonder how these kids fare, long term. Do they eventually see their parents for what they are? Because that's my understanding, is that eventually you sort of can, get to an age where you can see your parents for what they are and what they were.
Well, it really depends upon what kind of ego strength and skills they have. Because we're all born with, just like you have a certain IQ and a certain EQ, you also have other internal strengths and weaknesses, like your ability to handle emotions, know what to do with them, your ability to resist impulses, your ability to be self-reflective, how empathic you are. I mean, these are all literally like variables. It could be high, medium, or low. So it depends on a lot of that. Your ability even to see reality as what it is and to withstand the pain of it. So depending on those strengths and weaknesses, which I think is our job as parents to help our kids be as strong as they can be in all of these arenas as possible. But I see several kind of outcomes. There will be kids who become self-reflective and say, yes, it really hurt. My parent didn't know how to show up very well for me. It left a massive loss. This is what I'm doing to cope with that loss. I'm creating a new family, or I'm meeting my needs these ways. Then there are going to be other kids who are going to always remain defensive. Well, they tried and they meant well, and that's because they just can't bear to see the parent as flawed and failing them or as self-centered. And then you're going to get the kids who just don't have the ability to put it in words at all, and they may be more acting out. Then you might see more struggles with addiction, getting into toxic relationships themselves, and those types of things. There's some really good resource, though, two good resources. One is, I don't know how to say the last name. It's a French name. It's Ginot. Ginot. It's called Between Parent and Child, and you can get it on Amazon. It's an old book, but it's really helpful in helping you have dialogue with your kids. And then another great book for those who've grown up in a home like this is to look at Dr. Lindsay Gibson's work. She has one called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents.
Obsessed
She's essentially talking
with
about
her. Yes, that book
I know, I love
was
her
a life
stuff
changer
too.
for me. Yeah, part
it's
of that
fantastic.
club.
And her
let's
Bill
say.
of Rights in that second book are like amazing. Everybody should have that Bill of Rights tacked to their mirror and they read it every day.
Totally.
Wow.
Okay, one more question and maybe you can't even answer this. Is this a genetic situation? Is this trauma result? Like, are we worried about the kids inheriting some of these traits? Is it basically nurture or nature? What are we dealing with here?
Yeah, but it's all of it. And so it's, we're not exactly for sure. It's messy. There's certain types of parenting will cause this, by the way, having a overly harsh, rejecting parent who's very powerful and scary. For some, that power, they will then want to mirror it because at least they see that person as protecting themselves.
Right.
And so they're like, whoa, I should adopt that. I think my ex did that. And in some level, he thought, wow, my dad may be the worst man in the whole world, but hey, he walked through the world and terrified it, and it created safety for him, and he got what he wanted, so I'm going to do the same. I think a little bit of that. Certainly trauma can play an impact, but here, when people often like to make toxic people victims, which then mean we should be sympathetic towards them. Right. And I want to challenge that by saying almost nearly everybody has suffered some massive trauma at some point in their life. And not ever, all of us, how many of us are narcissists? Most of us are not. So trauma does not cause narcissism. Yeah. We need to put that away and know we don't need to feel sorry for their broken little souls. They are at some level conscious of what they're doing. So we need to hold them accountable for that. But I do think they've found with twin studies, there is a strong genetic component to this too, that you tend to see these symptoms show up really early, although they're not diagnosable until they're 18. But it does tend to run in families. And so there is that genetic piece. So the best explanation I've heard is a biosocial problem, which really essentially tells you nothing.
Yeah.
No, and I'm fascinated.
Yeah. I like that you said that because I read something lately that was, hurt people. Sure. But also some hurt people grow and they get therapy and they deal with their shit and they stop hurting people. And so let's take a bit of accountability and say, you're now an adult. If we're seeing these traits in children, okay, us as parents, maybe we need to step in or do something or wait till they're 18 or what have you. But if you're a fully grown adult, take some accountability for your actions and your choices and your trauma. If you had trauma, great. Yeah. Go and deal with it. Go and heal from it as best you can.
There is neurological differences in their brain. I do want to point that out. But the question still comes back to, well, where did that come from? Because we know environment can change the brain, the way it functions. Right. But we also know genetics can cause the brain to function differently. So again, it's like, okay, so the brain operates here. But why this is important, though? Because people are like, well, can't they change? I mean, isn't change possible? There's two questions. There's two ways I answer that. One is, well, their brain actually now as an adult is structured differently, and it's causing an inherent dysfunction. And that's very difficult. You're going to have to really work hard to overcome the way your mind works. But the second issue is, in order for change to occur, you have to be self-reflective. Well, that means then you have to really dig deep, tolerate shame, and they're very shame aversive, extremely highly defended against shame, which means they're not going to be self-reflective. So then there's going to be no change. So that's why I wouldn't be waiting on that. And if I was, I would want to see change. Seriously, if someone says, I think they've changed, I want to know, has it been more than a year? And do you see change across everywhere? Are they taking strong accountability in all parts of their life? Chances are they're not. Then that's not real change. That's just want to get you back.
Yeah. If the adult brain then is structured differently, are there interventions if we are seeing these traits in kids? Is there something that we should be doing if our kid is showing signs?
Yeah, I think one thing autism runs in my family. I'm actually autistic. My sons are autistic, and autism causes also empathy problems. But there's two types of empathy: cognitive empathy and affective empathy. Affective empathy probably isn't something you can make grow. If it's not there, it's not there. But you can cause a growth in cognitive empathy. And cognitive empathy is the ability to put yourself in somebody's shoes. So one of the things I would do with my kids is I would ask them, and they're boys, which makes it they even struggle more with being empathic towards other people. I would say to them, how would that make you feel if your friend did that to you? Imagine that your friend doesn't invite you to their party. Or imagine that you show up and don't give them a gift, or you walk out early. That would hurt my feelings. Would it hurt yours? You can put that out there and really work on them that way. And the other thing, this is a fun experiment. To find a safe reality show, something they could watch, age appropriate, turn the sound off, have them watch the body language and ask them what they think's going on. And then rewind it, have them watch it again and see how correct they were. How well were they picking up the cues happening between people? And then say, if that happened to you, how would that make you feel? If you were going through that and that person did this to you, what would you think and feel about? What would you think and how would you feel about that?
Very interesting. I love that.
So interesting. The last question that I had was about the term gaslighting, because I think it's become so trendy that everyone uses it.
Well, narcissism and gaslighting, these are now just
how do you know what's real gaslighting and what isn't?
Yeah. Gaslighting has come to mean deception, or you're making me feel feelings I don't like. That's what I'm noticing people are now interpreting it as. Gaslighting, actually, a great way to identify gaslighting is when somebody turns the problem into you. So a great example of, hey, the garbage didn't go out and we missed it. Oh, there you go again. You can never drop anything. See, now the issue is the garbage, but they've made the issue your reaction. Or you're not remembering it correctly. We never had that conversation. That's gaslighting. So it's that the shift away from the problem to you, and they make you the issue. So they deny your feelings, your opinions, your reality. They'll in some way. So there is a deceptive piece to it. They're avoiding the issue that was around, and maybe outright lying that you did have that conversation about the garbage, but they're claiming they didn't. So deception is always a part of gaslighting. But so all deception is not gaslighting, but all gaslighting has a piece of deception in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, we do this to our kids all the time. No, you're not hungry. You're just tired. Yes. Go to bed. You don't need a snack.
Are you going to stand there and whine, or you put your shoes on? We need to leave.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I know. When I started learning about gaslighting, I've done it a lot. But yeah.
We're all guilty.
Do all narcissists gaslight? Yeah. I would say universally probably they do. Because
or are they all deceptive?
It's a great way.
Are all narcissists deceptive? Do they all lead this sort of double life, this lie? Is that sort of par for the course? Not consciously. I would say they are all deceptive, but not consciously. I have a family member that's narcissistic, but this person would never know that they are the most conscientious. They think they mean well. They do really, truly mean well, but they don't face things honestly. They see it in kind of a little flawed or distorted. There's a lot of distortion. So not all of them are consciously lying, but yes, there's deception in all of them, unfortunately, because this is the problem. When you can't face what you're really doing that's causing the issue, then you're going to make it something else. And that is a deception.
Yeah. Yeah. Until you can take some accountability, it has to be everyone else's fault or problem, not yours. Right. Yeah. Oh, Kerry, this was so interesting.
I have so many more questions, but we'll have to save it for another day. But thank you so much for coming on.
This was a lot of fun.
How can people find you if they want to hear more about
and get
your book and what you're doing?
You can find me at Kerry McAvoy, PhD. Just smish it together, one word. That's me, Kerry McAvoy, PhD. And I'm most on TikTok a lot. I am on Facebook and Instagram as well as YouTube. And then I have a podcast, Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. So if you just want lots of education, but wrapped in stories, we talk a lot about the various aspects of narcissistic abuse on Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse.
I love that. Thank you. We will definitely include that all in the show notes. Thank you for your time and your expertise. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we can do this again.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kerry. Be well.
This episode was written and created by Alex Howard and Amanda Silver, produced, edited, and engineered by RTF Productions. Make sure to rate and review our show if you loved it, and give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast to stay up to date on all upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening, and go easy on us. We're not your ex.